Welcome back to the deep dive, where they show that, we don't just read the source material, we really try to dissect it to give you immediate, actionable knowledge.
That's right.
And today, we are diving into the absolute fundamentals of project success, but maybe in a way you wouldn't expect. We're looking at corrections.
Yeah, that's right. Our source material for this deep dive is the official list of errata. I mean, these are the subtle, specific, and often really crucial refinements made to the PMBOK Guide Sixth Edition.
hmm
If you live and breathe project management, these corrections, they aren't just typos. They are, basically the new gospel for precision.
Exactly. I think a lot of people see errata and think it's just dry reading,
Mm.
but we see it as unlocking the secrets to, well, clearer project execution.
Totally. The standards organization essentially found the weak links, right?
Right.
The ambiguities, the places where people commonly misinterpreted things.
And they just sharpen them.
They sharpen them into these high-precision tools. I mean, think of it this way. You've already read the manual. Now we're giving you the updated firmware.
Ah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it removes all the bugs, and it lets your processes run, perfectly. And critically, it aligns the language across your entire organization.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission here is pretty simple. We're going to guide you through the really high-impact updates in scope definition, in documentation flow, and schedule language.
Yep.
By the end of this deep dive, you'll be instantly informed on where the industry standard got sharper, and that's going to let you manage risk and stakeholder expectations like a pro.
So let's jump in.
Yeah, let's get straight into what is, I think it's maybe the biggest philosophical shift here, the transformation of the project scope statement.
Oh, absolutely. This one is huge.
So traditionally, the project scope statement was, it was sort of a catch-all document, right?
It really was a bit of a dumping ground.
Yeah. If you needed it, it was in there, the deliverables.
But also the assumptions, the constraints, all the potential obstacles.
Right, all of it. And it was trying to be both a definition of what you will do and also a list of what might stop you.
And that just created document bloat
Yeah.
and confusion. I mean, when a document tries to do too many things, it ends up not doing any of them particularly well.
True.
The core problem here was mixing the definition of the product with all these, potential environmental factors that influence the product.
So the first critical change happens in the process flow itself. The original standard suggested that you prepare the detailed scope statement by building on major deliverables, assumptions, and constraints from initiation.
Yeah, that whole idea is just,
It's out.
it's out.
Gone.
The correction clarifies that the preparation of the detailed project scope statement, it now builds on the high-level project description that you get during initiation.
Which is so different. That high-level description is aspirational. It's the elevator pitch.
It is, and that's a huge distinction in the process flow. We aren't asking for detailed constraints when we're just getting started.
But the real game changer here is the redefinition of the project scope statement itself. This is in the glossary updates.
The old definition included assumptions and constraints.
And the new one.
The new surgical definition is the description of the project scope, major deliverables, and exclusions. That's it. Assumptions and constraints are gone from that core definition.
Exclusions.
That is true.
That's a fundamentally different way of defining your boundaries. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what's the practical significance of this, of, removing assumptions and constraints and swapping in exclusions?
This is a massive win for practical clarity in project management. I mean, a huge win. Assumptions and constraints, they haven't been abandoned.
Right, they still exist.
Of course. They've just been correctly moved to where they belong in dynamic, dedicated tracking documents. The assumption log, the risk
Or
registry.
at least they change all the time.
They change constantly. So they shouldn't be part of your static scope baseline.
And the power of adding exclusions, that forces a proactive defense against scope creep, doesn't it?
Absolutely. By explicitly adding exclusions to the formal definition, the standard is forcing project teams to state up front exactly what they are not going to do.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine you're building a new IT system. A stakeholder might just assume that integration with the old legacy accounting system is included.
Of course they would.
Right. But if your scope statement now explicitly lists integration with legacy accounting system X as an exclusion, that's a hard documented boundary. You shut down that expectation immediately. And that is essential for managing what success looks like.
So the standard is essentially standardizing the I told you so moment.
Precisely. Is making sure boundaries are explicit, not just implied.
And we see this commitment to clarity kind of trickle down into the scope baseline updates as well.
We do. The documents you use for, say, defining, sequencing, or monitoring activities now explicitly focus on deliverables and acceptance criteria. All those old references to constraints and assumptions have been officially removed from these specific criteria.
So the standard is pushing you to define scope based on what you deliver and how the customer signs off, not based on the obstacles you think you might face.
Exactly. It's a much cleaner, more defensible position.
Okay, let's keep going on this theme of organizational rigor. The errata also made some really crucial refinements in how we classify our documentation, especially the inputs to certain processes.
Yes, and this is about being meticulous about whether we're dealing with a business document or a project document.
It can seem like it's just semantics, but getting these labels wrong. I mean, that's how process confusion starts in big organizations.
It absolutely is. So let's look at a key change in the develop project charter process flow. The corrections removed the bullet for the benefits management plan as an input under business documents.
Okay, wait a minute. If we're starting a project, aren't we risking, starting before we've fully defined the value proposition, if the benefits management plan isn't a required input for the charter?
That's a great question, and it really highlights the standard's focus on, well, reality.
Yeah.
The standard recognizes that while the business case which justifies the project is essential for the charter, the detailed benefits management plan, the thing that describes how and when benefits will actually be realized after the project closes, that's often a strategic organizational document. It gets refined concurrently with, or maybe even after, the charter is approved. So removing it as a hard, mandatory input for the charter process flow just signals its strategic importance outside the immediate tactical boundary of project initiation.
I see. So defining why the business case, that's step one. But planning the measurement of success, the benefits management plan, that can happen a little later?
Exactly. Now let's look at the flip side. Closed project or phase. The input here was explicitly changed from project documents to business documents.
Why the swap there? Wouldn't you close out a phase based on your technical project documents, like, completion reports?
You do, but the final formal closure of the project that requires sign-off that the strategic objectives have been met.
Okay.
And business documents, the business case, and the benefits management plan, they originate outside the project manager's immediate control, usually from the sponsor or the organization.
Right.
So by demanding business documents for closure, the standard is clarifying that the process involves confirming the project was successful from the business goals perspective, not just confirming that the technical documents are all filed away.
So you close the project when the business goal is satisfied, which means you have to go back to those initial strategic documents.
Precisely. It really emphasizes that project-to-program connection.
Okay, so moving away from process inputs for a second, I noticed a structural addition that sort of formalizes something that I think has always happened informally.
You must be pointing to the addition of management reviews.
I am. Yeah, this is now explicitly listed as item 19 under the components of the project management plan. It seems subtle, but it feels potent.
It is.
Why does just listing it explicitly in the plan components matter so much?
It's all about embedding accountability. If management reviews is a formal component of your project management plan, you are formally obligated to schedule them, to execute them, and to document those periodic checks and status meetings with senior management.
It standardizes executive oversight, then.
Exactly. It makes it a planned event, not just some ad hoc imposition from above.
Okay, here's where it gets, I think, really interesting for the team on the ground. The specific additions to the tools and techniques. These show which techniques the standard is now validating as, best practice.
Right. The standard is recognizing that project teams use a blend of management styles. They need formal protocols for both collaborative decisions and sometimes unilateral ones.
So we see a formal inclusion of voting as a tool. It's for processes like monitor and control project work and estimate activity durations. So that validates consensus building on performance tracking and time estimates.
But then, and this is interesting, we also see the inclusion of autocratic decision-making in the collect requirements process.
Which sounds like the exact opposite of collaboration.
It is, but it also reflects reality.
Okay, so let's connect that to the bigger picture. Why would the standard formalize autocratic decision-making?
Because sometimes consensus just isn't possible, or the project demands speed and compliance over collaboration. Think about a regulatory requirement.
Okay.
If a compliance office mandates a specific feature that has to be included, the project manager doesn't need to hold a vote on it. They just implement it. This acknowledges that in high-pressure situations or when requirements are externally mandated, someone just has to make the final, clear call.
So it's a tool for specific high-stakes contexts, and now it's just officially in the toolbox.
That's a great way to put it.
That grounds it nicely. The other major expansion is in data analysis. They added alternatives analysis as a formal tool for plan schedule management and plan cost management, and also for estimate activity durations.
Yeah, and this is a signal for required rigor before you commit to a path. Alternatives analysis means you are formally evaluating different strategic approaches.
Like what?
For example, in plan schedule management, you might formally analyze a predictive, like a waterfall approach, versus an adaptive agile approach. You document the pros and cons of each before you set the final schedule path.
So it prevents premature commitment. Instead of just picking the easiest method, you actually have to document why method A is better than method B for this specific project.
Exactly. For cost management, this could be a build versus buy analysis, or maybe leasing versus purchasing equipment. By formalizing this analysis, the standard encourages a structured comparison, which ensures the baselines are built on a robust, documented evaluation.
And it stops you from locking into a suboptimal plan too early. And just a quick mention on a critical process link refinement. The process box for define activities now explicitly includes change requests as an input.
That's a subtle but powerful acknowledgement that project managers aren't always working on a fresh plan. Defining activities is often a reaction to or a refinement driven by formal change requests from stakeholders.
And the standards now reflect that dynamic reality.
They do.
All right, let's tackle the language of time. This raises an important question about how our scheduling software communicates time shifts. The errata tackled a subtle but essential clarification in schedule terminology related to leads and lags.
This is a classic example of eliminating unnecessary ambiguity with just simple syntax. For our listeners who might be less steeped in the scheduling minutia, leads and lags define the relationship between activity.
Right.
A lag is a required delay between tasks, and a lead is an acceleration, where the next activity can start before the previous one finishes.
And the previous notation used a dash, correct?
Yes.
Something like FS-2 weeks for a finish to start lead.
Precisely. And that dash made the notation look like a negative number in software or in spreadsheets. It was confusing because a lead is time you save, but the notation looked subtractive.
It's a small thing, but I can see how that would cause errors.
Oh, absolutely. So the change revised the labels to remove the dash and just add clarity.
So instead of FS 2 weeks, it was changed to the much clearer FS with 2 weeks lead.
Right. And SS 15 days became SS with 15 days lag.
The benefit there seems twofold. First, it just gets rid of the confusing dash.
Yep. It ensures the notation clearly indicates the duration and the type lead, or lag. And second, it grounds the example in practical reality. Let's say your landscaping starts 2 weeks prior to your final punch list completion. That's a finish to start with a lead. The new syntax clarifies that acceleration immediately.
Precision is power, especially when you're dealing with multi-million-dollar schedules.
Okay.
Let's pivot to communications. They also redefined a key tool technique in the monitor communications process flow.
They did.
The tool was changed from point 3 data analysis to point 3 data representation.
And this is a beautiful example of process integrity. Why the swap? Well, data analysis, like trend analysis or variance analysis, that's generally covered in other monitoring processes. When you are monitoring communication specifically, your focus is on how effectively you are presenting information.
So data representation would be things like the stakeholder engagement assessment matrix.
Exactly. That matrix is a representation tool. It visually displays where your stakeholders are versus where you need them to be.
Yeah.
The whole focus of monitoring communications is ensuring the right message is being packaged and received effectively.
Which is a function of representation, not just raw analysis of numbers.
Exactly right.
And speaking of data flow, they also clarified the input that comes out of the execution process, direct and manage project work, when it feeds into monitor communications. The input changed from work performance reports to work performance data.
And this is critical for process alignment. The rawest form of information is work performance data. That data is then analyzed to become work performance information, and then it's finally packaged into formal work performance reports.
So there's a flow.
There's a flow, and the rule is execution processes generate raw data. Monitoring processes, like monitor communications, they consume that raw data to check the pulse of the project, not the already polished reports.
Again, it's all about maintaining that process integrity.
Yeah, it is. It's all connected.
So when we step back and look at all of this, What's fascinating is reviewing all these subtle corrections, from removing constraints from the scope baseline to the explicit definition of data types. What's the big theme?
I think there's one overarching theme, really.
Yeah.
Project management standard is striving for much higher precision and defensibility.
It's guiding practitioners away from ambiguity and toward absolute clarity.
It is. The shift means moving dynamic factors, like generic constraints and assumptions, out of the defining static core scope document.
And into those dedicated dynamic tracking documents like the risk or assumption logs.
We've moved from defining success by listing potential obstacles to defining success by documenting clear, defensible boundaries.
Indeed. And that brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. The new standard emphasizes deliverables, acceptance criteria, and crucially, exclusions as the core definition of the project scope. So if project success is now officially defined by its boundaries, what it includes and what it excludes, does this make modern project management less about managing the known risks and more about meticulously managing stakeholder expectations right at the fence line?
That's a great question.
What are the implications for project creativity when the container is so strictly defined by its outsides?
Something to think about. I'd say use these refined insights to sharpen your own playbook and your contract language. Precision is your greatest defense in a complex project environment.
A lot of high-value clarity gained today. We hope you feel instantly more informed and ready to implement that high-precision playbook. We'll catch you next time.